Hi everyone, this is Chris Moralia from the Transformative EdTech channel, and today we're going to be talking about using numbers, and this is a really rad reading strategy. This is from Eduprotocols, and it's one of my favorites. It's called Number Mania. So today we are going to be taking a look at one of my favorite radical reading strategies, and that is from the Eduprotocols. It's called Number Mania. So when we take a look at Number Mania, um, first of all, I understand that it's from the Eduprotocols. It's the book that was written by Marlene Hebern and John Carippo. It's a go-to of mine and for many teachers, as their protocols, as they call them, are simply strategies that are used to enhance student learning. And my favorite as a history teacher is the one called Number Mania. So Number Mania is used to, so basically it's a formative assessment tool for reading and comprehension. And a lot of students do not like to read informational text, especially in history. They don't see the point in it, just becomes regurgitated. But when we use Number Mania, it's done with a purpose. And today we're going to take it one step further. So I really like to teach literacy skills when my students were in my history class. And so for them to understand that some things like cause and effect, we would actually drill down to understand the language that's used in the history text. When students are taught this, it really makes things much more comprehensible as they continue in their education, especially in history classes. So we want to put purpose into reading. As I said, students typically is like, geez, I've got to read this. I don't really want to. I'm just going to turn the pages. In this case, we're looking at paragraphs. And the cool thing about Number Mania, it doesn't really require students to read a lot of information if you use a collaborative technique that's used with Number Mania. So let's take a look at what this is going to look like. We're also using the closed reading strategy. So we're looking at claims, and we're going to look at more so than anything else with evidence. What evidence does the author use to talk about why this was called? In this case, we're looking at a NEWSELA article called The Starving Time. And what are the language? Well, once again, this language is very, very important. So in order to do a Number Mania, you want to find a reading source, and you want to make sure that it has plenty of dates and numbers in it. This is what's real information, so informational numbers. You want to make sure that you have a slide deck with instructions. If you are using an LMS, you just simply link to the slide deck. And what that might look like is, so for example, here is my Number Mania slide deck. This is what my students would be looking at. And then you want to make sure that there's also icons. If you're able to put icons, I grab these from Flat Icons. That makes the process a little easier for students, because when they use these, as you'll see, they just simply grab it off from the side of the slide, or they're going to be using the Google tools. You want to make sure there's very specific instructions at the bottom of the slides. And so what we are doing here, as you're going to see, we're going to use cause and effect transition words. Okay, so we're going to be using this right here. And if you want to emphasize, you can bold it. But this is real important if you're teaching literacy for students as well. Now, next thing is you are going to assign a reading. I like to go to NEWSELA. As I said, NEWSELA has great informational text articles. They're short, sometimes 8 to 10 paragraphs. And as students are reading, they're going to highlight any numbers, dates, or words that are associated with numbers. The next step, as we're going to see, is they're going to navigate to a Jamboard to input what they found from their reading. So each student is going to be reading a paragraph, and you're going to see how quickly this can go. And then finally, with the formative assessment, they're going to take this information that's been put on the Jamboard, and they are going to create what's called an infograph with very specific instructions. So let's take a look at an example of what this might look like. So here's the article that I've selected, and here's what the process looks like. So each student is given an assigned paragraph. Okay, so we're looking at the New World, Jamestown in the Starving Time, and it's at level 6. Now, if you're familiar with the NEWSELA, you know you can adjust the Lexile level. And this is simply how Number Mania works. So as the students are reading, they only read one paragraph. So you can see how quickly this can go. First of all, they read the first paragraph. So student number 1 is reading the first paragraph. They simply highlight, and they can annotate, put a little note here. So what's the purpose of their highlighting? Okay, so if I'm highlighting this right here, so that I want the students to be able to say, okay, one goal was gold, or the only goal was gold, okay? And they save this, all right? Or they're gonna, because they're gonna quickly go to their Jamboard, they're gonna understand how quickly this works. Okay, so this is student number 1. Student number 2 has gone through, and obviously if there's not enough paragraphs, then you just repeat the process. Okay, so each number that the students come across, they simply highlight it. Now, if you want to, you could have students do this with the passages. They could read the whole thing and highlight it. I prefer to do it as a group. So basically, they're going through the whole reading, highlighting anything related to numbers. Okay, so you can see how fast this could get done. Now, as I said, you can either use a Google form to put the number information in so everybody has access to it. I'm going to go with a Jamboard. Okay, so this is student number 1. Student number 1 has read the first paragraph here. Okay, and it has the word first and the number 1. Okay, so on the Jamboard, they simply put the first goal was to, and we could say establish wealth, and then one goal, and mine was to find gold. Okay, that's all done now. So the next process is this, as this is populated with all the students have the information. Now the students are asked to select 5, so 5 from their classmates, 5 sticky notes from their classmates here to create an infograph. So they're now at the slide deck. Okay, so basically, so let's go with student number 1. Student number 1, they can simply grab this, or they can use the various tools, the squares, things like this. I like to put the icons as well, and they're not using any type of Google image search. So this student number 1 is going to put this right here. Okay, so remember, we're also trying to use transition words. So they have to think critically here. So if we're looking at this, we know that in the article it says the first joint stock was to company used to launch a lasting adventure was the Company of London. So when the students are doing this, they could say, they look at this, as a result, the Company of London the Company of London wanted to establish the first joint venture in the New World. So the student could type that. Now they're selecting from the Jamboard, and there was other information too. So let's say they decide, and they want to do this as chronologically as possible. Let's say they come across the reading where it actually talks about the starving time. So let's say they use this icon right here. Okay, and once again, their students are saying, as a result, or let's use another transition word, due to the fact that the colonists were unprepared, many died in the winter of 1609, 1610. Okay, so they do this like 3 other times, and there they go. They have a summary of their reading, and they're using the cause and effect process. So you can see how simple this is. Like I said, Eduprotocols is one of my favorites. So thanks for joining me here on Transformative EdTech.